The sky over the desert stretched endlessly, a canvas painted with hues of orange and red, as if the sun itself had decided to bleed out its last light. Ethan Rowe adjusted his makeshift campfire, muttering curses under his breath. The logs he'd scavenged were stubbornly refusing to catch flame, a problem that seemed symbolic of his life lately. Stuck on Earth, stuck in my career, and now stuck with damp wood, he grumbled, tossing a glance at the uncooperative pile. A brief spark fizzled, mocking his efforts. Ethan was an astrophysicist, or had been, until budget cuts at the observatory sent him spiraling into an existential crisis. He'd decided a solo camping trip might help him find himself, but so far all he'd found was a renewed hatred for mosquitoes and an alarming dependence on instant noodles. As the desert air grew cooler, he leaned back against a rock, staring up at the sky. Tonight was special. The Perseid meteor shower was at its peak. If nothing else, he figured he could enjoy the show and pretend for a moment that the universe wasn't actively conspiring against him. The first streak of light appeared, cutting across the twilight like a knife, then another. Ethan's cynicism began to melt as the meteors multiplied, their brilliance illuminating the desert in fleeting bursts. And then, something strange happened. One of the streaks didn't fade. Instead, it grew brighter, larger, and unmistakably closer. Ethan squinted, his heart skipping a beat. Was it a meteor? A satellite falling out of orbit? A rogue asteroid with his name on it? The object hurtled toward the horizon, its descent punctuated by an eerie hum that vibrated through the air. Ethan scrambled to his feet, torn between running for cover and staying to watch. Curiosity won out. The object crashed with a resounding thud about a mile away, sending a plume of dust into the air. For a moment, the desert was silent, as if the world itself was holding its breath. "Well?" Ethan said aloud, his voice trembling with equal parts fear and excitement. "That's not something you see every day." Grabbing his flashlight and a slightly rusty multi-tool, because who knew what kind of alien life forms carried grudges, he set off toward the crash site. The journey took longer than expected, thanks to the uneven terrain and Ethan's less than athletic stamina. By the time he reached the impact zone, his lungs were protesting, and his flashlight was flickering ominously. The crash site was surreal. The object, a sleek oblong craft that seemed to shimmer between metallic and organic, was embedded in the sand, steam rising from its surface. Strange symbols glowed faintly along its hull, shifting and rearranging like living hieroglyphs. "Okay, Ethan," he muttered, trying to steady his nerves. "You're not hallucinating. Probably." As he inched closer, a low hum emanated from the craft, followed by a sudden hiss. A section of the hull slid open, revealing a soft, otherworldly light. Ethan froze, every survival instinct screaming at him to turn and run. But then she stepped out. She was tall, her form humanoid, but undeniably alien. Her skin shimmered like liquid starlight, and her eyes, large, luminous, and violet, seemed to see straight through him. Her hair, or what passed for it, flowed like strands of liquid silver, defying gravity with a subtle, hypnotic motion. Ethan's first thought was, "I'm definitely hallucinating." His second thought was, if I'm not hallucinating, I'm either incredibly lucky or incredibly doomed. The alien woman surveyed him with an expression that could only be described as bemused disdain. "You're the one who found me?" she said, her voice melodic yet laced with sarcasm. "I was hoping for someone taller." Ethan blinked. Sorry?" She sighed, stepping fully into the open. "I suppose you'll have to do. My name is—" She paused, producing a sound that was a mix of musical notes and static interference. Seeing his blank expression, she rolled her eyes. "Call me Lyra. It's close enough." "Ethan," he replied, still struggling to process the situation. "Ethan Rowe." Lyra tilted her head, studying him as if he were an insect under a microscope. "You look fragile. Are all humans this breakable, or are you an outlier?" Hey, I'll have you know I'm in great shape, Ethan protested, immediately regretting the lie as he caught his reflection in the craft's surface. Disheveled hair, sweat-streaked face, and a slight paunch from too many late-night snacks. Lyra smirked, a surprisingly human expression. If you say so. The conversation that followed was surreal. Lyra explained, albeit reluctantly, that she was an explorer from a distant star system, here on what she cryptically described as a personal mission. Ethan, in turn, tried to explain his presence in the desert, though his tale of unemployment and midlife crisis seemed laughably mundane in comparison. At one point, Lyra gestured toward his campfire tools. Is that your attempt at combustion? Ethan bristled. Yes, and it would have worked if the wood wasn't damp. Lyra raised an elegant eyebrow. Primitive. Even our larvae can produce fire more efficiently. Despite himself, Ethan chuckled. Great, now I'm being roasted by an alien, literally and figuratively. Lyra's lips twitched, almost forming a smile. You're more amusing than I expected. I suppose I won't disintegrate you. Yet. Gee, thanks, Ethan said dryly. As the night wore on, the tension between them began to ease, replaced by a strange camaraderie. Lyra's sharp humor kept Ethan on his toes, while his self-deprecating wit seemed to amuse her. When Ethan finally asked why she'd chosen to reveal herself to him, Lyra's expression grew distant. Let's just say you were convenient, she replied, though her tone hinted at something more. Before he could press her further, she glanced at the sky, her violet eyes reflecting the stars. We should rest. Tomorrow, I'll show you something your kind has never seen. Ethan's curiosity flared, but exhaustion won out. As he lay under the vast desert sky, Lyra sitting silently nearby, he couldn't help but feel that his life had taken a turn he'd never anticipated. For the first time in years, the universe seemed vast, not just in size but in possibility. The desert night was alive with sound, the chirping of crickets, the whisper of a cool breeze, and the faint hum emanating from Lyra's mysterious craft. Ethan Rowe lay sprawled on his sleeping bag, staring at the stars as they twinkled in the vast expanse above. Lyra sat nearby, cross-legged on the sand, her violet eyes glowing faintly in the dark. She seemed to be studying the constellations, though the way her gaze shifted, it was as if she saw patterns Ethan couldn't even begin to comprehend. You know, Ethan began, breaking the silence, I've spent years studying the cosmos, and I've never felt smaller than I do right now. Lyra turned her head, her silvery hair catching the moonlight. Smallness is a matter of perspective, she said, her tone teasing. To an ant, you're a giant. To me, you're, well, still small, but slightly amusing. Ethan chuckled. Glad I can entertain you. So what's the deal with your ship? It's like something out of a science fiction movie. Lyra raised an eyebrow. Your movies are quaint, but yes, my vessel is advanced by your standards. It's powered by a crystalline core that draws energy from quantum flux fields, or, as you'd call it, magic. Ethan smirked. Hey, I know what quantum flux fields are. Sort of. Do you? Lyra's eyes sparkled with mockery. Explain them to me then, I could use a laugh. Well, Ethan faltered, scratching the back of his neck. They're, fields, that flux. Lyra burst into laughter, a sound like chimes caught in a breeze. You're hopeless, human. Hey, I'm an astrophysicist, not a quantum physicist, Ethan protested. Cut me some slack. The fire crackled between them, casting flickering shadows on the sand. Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that he was sitting across from a being who had seen things he couldn't even dream of. So, he said, leaning back against a rock, what's it like out there? Beyond our little corner of the galaxy. Lyra's expression softened, her teasing demeanor giving way to something more contemplative. It's vast, she said, her voice quieter now. Beautiful, yes, but also chaotic. Stars are born and die in an instant. Worlds thrive and collapse. Civilizations rise only to crumble into dust. Ethan nodded, captivated. Sounds a lot like Earth, just on a bigger scale. Lyra tilted her head. Perhaps, but there's something unique about your kind. You persist, even when the odds are stacked against you. It's intriguing. Intriguing is a polite way of saying stubborn, isn't it? Ethan quipped. She smiled faintly. Perhaps. As the night deepened, Lyra began to share stories of her travels. She spoke of a planet where the oceans glowed with bioluminescent creatures that sang in harmony, their melodies shaping the tides. She described a star system where the planets were connected by shimmering bridges of energy, allowing its inhabitants to walk between worlds. Ethan listened, enraptured. That sounds incredible. Meanwhile, we're here trying to figure out how to get people to Mars without them dying of radiation. Lyra chuckled. You're doing well, considering your limitations, though your reliance on combustion engines is adorable. Hey, those combustion engines got us to the moon, Ethan said defensively. Barely, Lyra retorted, her grin widening. Eventually, the conversation turned to more personal topics. Ethan found himself opening up in a way he hadn't expected. He told Lyra about his work at the observatory, his passion for studying the stars, and the crushing disappointment of losing his job. Lyra listened intently, her expression unreadable. When he finished, she said, "Your species has an odd relationship with purpose. You tie your worth to what you do, rather than what you are." Ethan frowned. What we are isn't always enough. We need to contribute to make a difference. Lyra leaned forward, her gaze piercing. But who decides what's enough? Your achievements? Your failures? Or something deeper? Ethan had no answer. To lighten the mood, Lyra shared a story of her own, a mishap from her early days as an explorer. She described how she'd accidentally triggered a planetary defense system while attempting to study a sentient forest, resulting in a comical chase involving mechanical drones and angry trees. Ethan laughed so hard he nearly fell over. You're telling me you got outsmarted by a forest? Lyra's lips twitched. It was a very clever forest. The humor was a welcome reprieve, and for the first time, Ethan felt a genuine connection with her. Despite her otherworldly nature, Lyra seemed relatable. As the fire burned low, Ethan noticed Lyra's gaze drifting upward again. You really like staring at the stars, huh? He said. They're familiar, she replied. No matter where I go, they're always there, constant yet ever-changing. Ethan nodded. Yeah, I get that. They've always been my escape too. When everything else feels like it's falling apart, I look up and it helps. For a moment, neither of them spoke, the silence filled only by the crackle of the fire and the distant call of a coyote. Finally, Lyra stood, brushing sand from her shimmering attire. Get some rest, Ethan. Tomorrow I'll show you something your kind has never seen. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Should I be excited or terrified? Lyra smirked. Both. As she walked back toward her craft, Ethan couldn't help but smile. For the first time in a long while, he felt a spark of curiosity, a sense of wonder that had been missing from his life. Whatever tomorrow held, he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't going to forget this night, or the alien woman who had turned his world upside down. The desert dawn was a masterpiece of pastel hues, with the sun painting the horizon in strokes of lavender, peach, and gold. Ethan Rowe woke to the sound of something humming, a soft, rhythmic vibration that seemed to resonate in his bones. He groaned, shielding his eyes from the rising sun as he sat up. Morning already? He muttered, glancing around. His campfire had burned out, leaving only a smoldering pile of ash. Lyra's ship, still half buried in the sand, glowed faintly in the early light. Lyra herself was standing nearby, her silvery hair shimmering as if catching light from a source Ethan couldn't see. She was holding a small translucent device that projected a holographic display into the air. Symbols and diagrams floated around her, rearranging themselves as she gestured. "Morning, Lyra," Ethan called out, stretching. "What's the plan? Are we hunting for space treasure? Meeting your alien friends? Avoiding death by dehydration?" Lyra glanced over her shoulder, raising an eyebrow. "Good morning to you too, human. And no, we're not meeting anyone. Yet. First, we need to repair my ship." Ethan blinked. "Wait, your ship's broken? You didn't mention that last night." "I didn't think you needed to know," Lyra said, her tone nonchalant. "Besides, it's only a minor malfunction." "Minor?" Ethan gestured at the half-buried craft. "It looks like it crash-landed after losing a fight with gravity." Lyra smirked. "Gravity is a formidable opponent, I'll admit, but the ship's core is intact, which means we can fix it. I just need a few materials." Ethan crossed his arms. "Let me guess. You're going to send me on a scavenger hunt through the desert for alien parts." Lyra tilted her head, considering. "Not quite. I'll handle the repairs. You'll assist me." "Great," Ethan said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "I always wanted to be an alien mechanic." Lyra led Ethan to the ship, her stride confident despite the uneven terrain. Up close, the vessel was even more impressive, or intimidating depending on how you looked at it. Its surface was smooth and seamless, with no visible rivets or seams. The glowing symbols that adorned it shifted like living things, responding to Lyra's touch. "So, what's wrong with it?" Ethan asked, peering at the hull. "The quantum stabilizer is misaligned," Lyra explained, as if that clarified everything. "Right," Ethan said, nodding sagely. "And that's bad?" "It means the ship can't generate a stable quantum field," Lyra said patiently. "Without it, we're not going anywhere." "Got it," Ethan said, though he didn't. "So, how do we fix it?" Lyra pointed to a section of the hull that had partially detached, revealing a network of glowing conduits. "I need to recalibrate the core's energy flow. Your job is to hold this." She handed him a small cylindrical device that pulsed with a soft blue light. "What is it?" Ethan asked, turning it over in his hands. "A flux modulator," Lyra replied. "Sounds fancy," Ethan said. "What happens if I drop it?" Lyra gave him a deadpan look. "You'll probably destabilize the quantum field and cause a localized implosion." Ethan froze, gripping the device tightly. "You're joking, right?" Lyra's lips twitched. "Maybe." The repair process was both fascinating and nerve-wracking. Lyra worked with precision, her hands moving deftly over the ship's inner workings. She occasionally muttered to herself in a language Ethan didn't understand, though he caught the occasional frustrated sigh. "So is this what you do for fun?" Ethan asked, trying to lighten the mood. "Crash on random planets and fix your ship?" Lyra glanced at him. "I prefer to think of it as an adventure. And for the record, I don't crash often." "Define often," Ethan said, grinning. Lyra rolled her eyes. "Do you always talk this much?" "Only when I'm nervous," Ethan admitted, "or when I'm holding a potentially implosive alien gadget." As the morning wore on, Ethan found himself surprisingly engrossed in the work. Lyra's explanations, though often laced with sarcasm, were intriguing. She described how the ship's systems operated on principles far beyond human understanding, blending advanced technology with what she called biosymbiotic interfaces. "So your ship is alive?" Ethan asked, fascinated. "In a sense," Lyra replied. "It's not sentient, but it's adaptive. It responds to my commands and can repair itself, usually." "Sounds like the ultimate smart car," Ethan said. Lyra raised an eyebrow. "Your vehicles require external maintenance and can't even navigate autonomously. Hardly a fair comparison." "Okay, ouch," Ethan said, laughing. "Point taken." By midday, the repairs were nearly complete. Lyra stepped back, inspecting her work with a critical eye. "That should do it," she said, brushing her hands together. Ethan let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "So what now? Do we take it for a test drive?" Lyra shook her head. "Not yet. The core needs time to stabilize. In the meantime, I thought I'd show you something." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Something like what?" Lyra's enigmatic smile returned. "You'll see." She led him to a nearby rock formation, where the desert opened up into a vast, flat expanse. Lyra pulled a small device from her belt and pressed a button. A shimmering portal appeared in the air, its edges crackling with energy. Ethan stared, his jaw dropping. "What is that?" "A gateway," Lyra said, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. "It's not far, just a short trip." Ethan hesitated. "Define short." Lyra rolled her eyes. "Do you always ask so many questions?" "Only when portals are involved," Ethan said. Lyra sighed. "Trust me, human. You'll thank me later." With that, she stepped through the portal, disappearing in a flash of light. Ethan stared at the swirling energy, his heart pounding. "Well, Ethan," he muttered to himself, "this is either the best decision of your life or the dumbest." Taking a deep breath, he stepped through. On the other side, Ethan found himself standing on a floating platform, surrounded by a sea of stars. Planets and moons orbited in the distance, their surfaces glowing with vibrant colors. Strange, ethereal creatures drifted through the void, their forms shimmering like glass. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. This is incredible." Lyra stood beside him, her expression softening. "Welcome to the Celestial Nexus," she said, "a place where the boundaries between worlds blur." Ethan turned to her, his awe evident. "Why are you showing me this?" Lyra's gaze met his, her violet eyes shimmering. "Because, human, sometimes you need to see the universe to understand your place in it." For the first time in years, Ethan felt truly alive. Ethan stumbled out of the shimmering portal, his feet landing on something that felt suspiciously like cobblestones. Only the stones weren't stone at all. They were translucent, glowing with shifting colors that rippled beneath his boots like liquid light. "Where are we now?" he asked, glancing around. They stood in the middle of what could only be described as an alien bazaar. The air was alive with sound, musical tones that seemed to hum directly into his mind, overlapping with bursts of chatter in dozens of languages. Towering structures rose around them, their surfaces adorned with intricate patterns that seemed to rearrange themselves when Ethan looked away. Lyra smirked at his wide-eyed expression. "Welcome to the Empyrean Market," she said, spreading her arms. "A nexus of trade where beings from across the galaxy come to barter, bargain, and occasionally brawl." "Occasionally brawl?" Ethan repeated, his eyebrows shooting up. "Only on discount days," Lyra said, her lips twitching. As they walked through the market, Ethan couldn't help but gawk at the sheer variety of life forms around him. There were creatures that floated like jellyfish, their translucent bodies pulsating with inner light. Others were hulking masses of muscle and armor, their guttural voices rumbling like thunder. One particularly odd being resembled a walking fern, its fronds rustling as it exchanged glowing spheres with a merchant whose face was a swirling vortex of stars. Ethan leaned closer to Lyra. "Do I want to know what they're trading?" Lyra glanced at the transaction. "Memory spheres. The fern-like one probably trades in botanical knowledge, rare plants, medicinal secrets, that sort of thing." "Wait, you can trade memories?" Ethan asked, incredulous. "Of course," Lyra said, "though I wouldn't recommend it. Memories are tricky things. Lose the wrong one and you might forget how to tie your shoes." Ethan looked down at his boots, suddenly grateful for their laces. Their first stop was a stall run by a merchant with 8 arms and a face that resembled a cluster of glowing orbs. The alien's voice was melodic, each word resonating like a chime. "Lyra, the merchant said, inclining its head. It's been some time. Have you come to trade? Just browsing, Lyra replied smoothly, but I might need some clinite shards if you have them. The merchant's orbs flickered. Clinite is rare these days. What do you offer in return? Lyra pulled a small, iridescent crystal from her belt. A fragment of starfire, authentic, harvested from the nebula of Erythra. The merchant hummed, its orbs glowing brighter. Impressive. Let us haggle. As Lyra and the merchant negotiated, Ethan wandered a few steps away, drawn to a stall displaying what looked like holographic books. The vendor, a squat insectoid creature with 3 eyes, chirped at him. Human, yes, it said, its voice high-pitched. You like stories? I have tales from 1,000 worlds. Ethan hesitated. I'm more of a reader than a collector. The vendor's mandibles clicked in amusement. Then read. These books are alive. They tell themselves to you. Ethan picked up one of the holographic tomes, which flickered to life in his hands. Images and sounds flooded his mind. A tale of love and betrayal on a planet with 3 suns. He set it down quickly, overwhelmed. Maybe later, he said, backing away. When he returned to Lyra, she was holding a small pouch that glowed faintly. What's in there? Ethan asked. Clinite shards, Lyra said, tucking the pouch into her belt. Essential for stabilizing the quantum core. Great, Ethan said. Now can we leave before I accidentally buy something I can't afford? Lyra smirked. Relax, human. The market isn't dangerous unless you're foolish. As if on cue, a loud commotion erupted nearby. Ethan turned to see a towering alien with spiked appendages arguing with a vendor. The alien's voice boomed, shaking the air. What's that about? Ethan asked, edging closer to Lyra. Probably a pricing dispute, Lyra said casually. Let's go before it escalates. Define escalates, Ethan said nervously. Explosions, usually, Lyra replied, already walking away. They passed a stall where a vendor was selling what looked like bottled lightning. Another displayed floating orbs that emitted soothing music. Ethan couldn't help but marvel at the sheer ingenuity on display. Do you ever get used to this? He asked. Lyra shrugged. It's just another day in the galaxy. Yeah, well, for me it's like walking into a sci-fi fever dream, Ethan said. Lyra laughed. You humans and your movies. Always so dramatic. Hey, some of those movies are classics, Ethan said defensively, like Star Wars. Lyra rolled her eyes. Don't get me started on your space operas. They're entertaining, but the physics are atrocious. As they prepared to leave the market, a small spherical drone zipped up to them, its surface covered in blinking lights. It hovered in front of Lyra, emitting a rapid series of beeps. Lyra sighed. Not now, Zix. I'm busy. The drone beeped insistently. Who's this? Ethan asked, eyeing the drone warily. My ship's assistant, Lyra said. It's supposed to monitor the core's status, but it's also annoyingly persistent. Zix beeped again, this time flashing a red light. Lyra frowned. What do you mean the core's destabilizing? The drone emitted a flurry of beeps and projected a hologram showing the ship's interior. One of the conduits was glowing ominously. Great, Lyra muttered. Looks like we need to head back. Ethan sighed. And here, I thought we were done with ship repairs. Lyra shot him a look. Welcome to my life, human. As they made their way back to the portal, Ethan couldn't help but feel a mix of awe and exhaustion. The Empyrean market had been an incredible experience, but it was also a reminder of just how far he was from the familiar comforts of Earth. Still, as they stepped through the portal and returned to the desert, Ethan found himself smiling. Lyra, he said, glancing at her. Thanks for bringing me along. That was unforgettable. Lyra's expression softened. Don't thank me yet. The adventure's just beginning. And with that, they turned their attention back to the ship, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The desert was alive with sound, as Ethan and Lyra worked to stabilize the ship's quantum core. The hum of alien machinery blended with the occasional chirp of unseen creatures, creating an oddly serene backdrop to their increasingly tense situation. Ethan wiped sweat from his brow and squinted at the holographic display Zix was projecting. "So let me get this straight," he said, pointing at a glowing diagram. "This thing," he gestured to a pulsing conduit, "is leaking energy, and if we don't fix it, the ship turns into a very expensive firework." Lyra, crouched next to the ship's open hull, didn't look up. "More or less, but don't worry, human, I've done this before." "That's not comforting," Ethan muttered. "Would you prefer I lie?" Lyra asked, a smirk tugging at her lips. "Actually, yeah," Ethan said. "A little reassurance wouldn't hurt." Lyra straightened, holding a tool that looked like a cross between a wrench and a tuning fork. "Fine. Everything is under control. You have nothing to worry about." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "You're lying, aren't you?" "Obviously," Lyra said, her smirk widening. As Lyra adjusted the ship's conduits, Ethan found himself pacing. He wasn't sure if it was the heat, the stress, or the fact that he was currently standing in the middle of nowhere with an alien woman and a sentient drone, but his nerves were starting to fray. "So, what happens if we don't fix this in time?" he asked, trying to sound casual. Lyra didn't look up. "Worst case, the ship's core destabilizes, creating a localized quantum implosion." Ethan froze. "Localized quantum implosion? That sounds bad." "It's not ideal," Lyra admitted. "Not ideal?" Ethan repeated, his voice rising. "Lyra, that's the understatement of the century." Lyra glanced at him, her expression calm. "Panicking won't help. Now hand me that flux modulator." Ethan grabbed the cylindrical device from the toolbox and handed it to her, muttering under his breath. Panicking seems perfectly reasonable when quantum implosions are on the table. Just as Lyra was making the final adjustments, Zix emitted a series of frantic beeps. The drone's lights flashed red, and it projected a new hologram, a rapidly approaching object, moving fast. Lyra frowned. "That's not good." Ethan peered at the hologram. "What is it? A meteor? A spaceship? A really angry bird?" "None of the above," Lyra said, her tone grim. "It's a patrol drone." Ethan blinked. "A patrol drone? Is that bad?" "For me, yes," Lyra said, closing the hull panel with a sharp snap. "For you, it depends on how good you are at lying." Ethan's stomach dropped. "Why would I need to lie?" "Because," Lyra said, standing and brushing off her hands, "if that drone scans the ship and finds me, it'll report my location to the Galactic Authority." "And that's bad?" Ethan asked again, though he already knew the answer. Lyra gave him a look. "Do you ever stop asking obvious questions?" "Not when my life is on the line," Ethan shot back. The patrol drone arrived moments later, descending from the sky like a mechanical hawk. It was sleek and angular, its metallic surface gleaming in the sunlight. A single red eye scanned the area, casting a faint glow over the sand. Ethan stood frozen as the drone hovered in front of him. A mechanical voice crackled to life. "Identify yourself," it demanded. Ethan swallowed hard. Hi, I'm Ethan Rowe. Just, a regular guy, camping, in the desert." The drone's eye narrowed. At least, that's what it looked like to Ethan. "This area is restricted. Explain your presence." Ethan glanced at Lyra, who was standing just out of the drone's line of sight, motioning for him to keep talking. "Right, restricted. Didn't know that, my bad, I was just stargazing. Yeah, stargazing. Big fan of stars." The drone emitted a low hum, as if unconvinced. "Stargazing is not permitted in this sector." "Really? That's a shame," Ethan said, forcing a laugh. "You've got some great stars out here." Lyra rolled her eyes, mouthing, "Distracted." Ethan cleared his throat. "So, what brings you out here, Mr. Drone? Or is it Mrs. Drone? Do drones have genders, or is that rude to ask?" The drone tilted slightly, its eye flickering. Query irrelevant. Right, of course, Ethan said, nodding. Sorry, just trying to make conversation. You know, break the ice. The drone hummed again, this time louder. Your presence is highly suspicious. Prepare for scanning. Ethan's heart raced. Scanning? That doesn't sound necessary. I mean, look at me. Do I look suspicious? I'm just a guy with a tent and a canteen. The drone ignored him, its eye glowing brighter. A beam of light shot out, sweeping over Ethan and the surrounding area. Lyra cursed under her breath. It's scanning for energy signatures. We need to move. Move where? Ethan hissed. Anywhere but here, Lyra said, grabbing his arm. They bolted, sprinting across the desert as the drone's beam followed them. Zix beeped frantically, zipping ahead to scout a path. Is this your idea of a fun day? Ethan shouted, his breath coming in gasps. Welcome to my life, Lyra called back, her tone almost cheerful. They reached a rocky outcropping and ducked behind it, panting. The drone hovered above, its beam sweeping the area. Any bright ideas? Ethan asked, clutching his knees. Lyra pulled a small device from her belt. One, but you're not going to like it. She pressed a button, and the device emitted a high-pitched whine. The drone's beam faltered, its movements becoming erratic. What did you do? Ethan asked, watching as the drone spun in circles. Scrambled its sensors, Lyra said. It'll reboot in a few minutes, so we need to get back to the ship, now. And they sprinted back to the ship, the drone still flailing in the distance. As they reached the hull, Lyra activated the ship's cloaking field. The vessel shimmered, then disappeared from view. Ethan leaned against the invisible hull, gasping for air. I take back everything I said about camping being boring, Lyra chuckled. You handled yourself well, human, for a first-timer. Yeah, well, next time let's skip the patrol drones, Ethan said. Lyra smirked. Where's the fun in that? As the ship powered up, Ethan couldn't help but laugh. He was exhausted, terrified, and completely out of his depth. But for the first time in years, he felt alive. The ship lurched out of hyperspace, leaving behind the shimmering streaks of starlight that had become oddly comforting to Ethan. He was still clutching the armrest of his chair, his knuckles white. Was that supposed to feel like a roller coaster on steroids? He asked, his voice shaky. Lyra, seated at the helm, glanced back at him with a smirk. You get used to it. Besides, that was a smooth jump. Smooth? Ethan exclaimed. I'm pretty sure my stomach is still somewhere in the last star system. Lyra chuckled and turned her attention to the planet coming into view. It was a patchwork of greens, blues, and shimmering silver. Massive cities dotted its surface, their spires piercing the atmosphere like needles. Where are we now? Ethan asked, leaning forward to get a better look. Welcome to Axion, Lyra said, her tone laced with both admiration and exasperation. The galaxy's hub of innovation, invention, and occasionally insanity. Sounds promising, Ethan said, raising an eyebrow. As they descended toward the planet, Ethan got a closer look at the sprawling cities. They were a chaotic blend of architectural styles. Sleek, futuristic towers stood next to structures that looked like they'd been plucked from a medieval fantasy. Bridges of light connected floating platforms, and vehicles of all shapes and sizes zipped through the air. This place is like a sci-fi fever dream, Ethan muttered. Lyra laughed. Axion is home to the brightest minds in the galaxy. Scientists, engineers, artists, you name it, they're here. Of course, with that much brilliance comes a fair share of eccentricity. As if on cue, a massive hologram of a grinning alien with 3 eyes and a bright yellow hat appeared in the sky. Welcome to Axion, it boomed. Please enjoy our many innovations and remember, patents are for cowards. Ethan blinked. Did that hologram just encourage intellectual theft? Lyra shrugged. That's Axion for you. Creativity here is unorthodox. As they landed on a platform outside a sprawling complex that looked like a cross between a university campus and an amusement park. Signs in various languages directed visitors to workshops, laboratories, and something called the Improbability Pavilion. "What's the plan?" Ethan asked as they stepped off the ship. Lyra adjusted her belt, where the pouch of clinite shards was securely fastened. "We're here to meet an old friend of mine. She's a brilliant engineer. If anyone can help stabilize the quantum core, it's her." "Should I be worried that all your friends seem to have a knack for dangerous technology?" Ethan asked. Lyra grinned. "Only if you're afraid of a little excitement." Their destination was a workshop tucked away in a quieter corner of the complex. The sign above the door read, "Dr. Quill's Quantum Emporium. No refunds, no regrets." Ethan hesitated. "Is it too late to turn back?" Lyra ignored him and pushed open the door. Inside, the workshop was a chaotic wonderland. Gadgets and gizmos covered every surface, some humming, others sparking. A mechanical arm was assembling something in the corner, while a floating orb zipped around, muttering to itself. In the center of the chaos stood Dr. Quill, a tall, wiry alien with 4 arms and a mane of iridescent feathers. She was wearing goggles that magnified her already large eyes, giving her the appearance of a startled bird. "Lyra!" Quill exclaimed, her voice high-pitched and enthusiastic. She scurried over, her multiple arms waving. "It's been ages. And who's this?" Lyra gestured to Ethan. "This is Ethan. He's a human." Quill leaned in close, studying Ethan with a curious expression. "Fascinating. Do all humans look this squishy?" Ethan took a step back. "Squishy? I prefer to think of myself as resilient." Quill cackled. "I like him. He'll make a fine test subject." "Test subject?" Ethan repeated, alarmed. Lyra patted his shoulder. "Relax, she's joking, mostly." As Lyra and Quill discussed the ship's quantum core, Ethan wandered around the workshop, marveling at the strange inventions. One device looked like a blender, but when he pressed a button it projected a hologram of a dancing alien. "Careful with that," Quill called over her shoulder. "It's still in beta. The last person who used it ended up with a holographic conga line that wouldn't stop for 3 days. Ethan quickly set the device down. After an hour of tinkering, Quill finally stepped back from the holographic schematic of the ship's core. "There's a solution," she declared. "Great," Ethan said. "What is it?" Quill grinned. "We'll need to build a stabilizer using a rare alloy. Fortunately, there's a supplier here on Axion." "And unfortunately?" Ethan prompted. Quill's grin widened. "The supplier is unconventional." Their journey to the supplier took them to the heart of Axion's improbability district. The streets were lined with stalls selling everything from self-folding laundry to edible holograms. One vendor tried to sell Ethan a pocket universe, which he politely declined. The supplier's shop was a towering structure made entirely of glass, with a sign that read, "Wren's Wonders. If it exists, I have it. If it doesn't, I'll make it." Wren turned out to be a short, stout alien with skin that shimmered like oil on water. He greeted them with a toothy grin. "Looking for something special?" Quill explained their needs, and Wren's grin grew wider. "I've got just the thing, but it'll cost you." Lyra crossed her arms. "How much?" Wren tapped his chin. "Oh, not credits. I prefer unique trades." Ethan groaned. "Why do I feel like this is going to be weird?" Wren's price turned out to be a performance. He wanted Ethan and Lyra to participate in a musical duel against his house band. "You can't be serious," Ethan said, staring at the assortment of alien instruments Wren had provided. "Deadly serious," Wren replied. Lyra shrugged and picked up a glowing stringed instrument. "Let's do this." Ethan sighed and grabbed a drum-like device that vibrated when touched. "If we survive this, I'm never complaining about karaoke night again." The musical duel was chaotic, hilarious, and surprisingly fun. By the end, Wren was laughing so hard he could barely stand. "You win," he declared, handing over the alloy. As they left the shop, Ethan turned to Lyra. You owe me an explanation and possibly therapy. Lyra grinned. Admit it, you had fun. Ethan shook his head, but couldn't help smiling. You're impossible. Lyra's eyes sparkled. And you're starting to enjoy it. The ship hummed with renewed energy as Lyra and Ethan stood side by side in the control room. The once unstable quantum core now pulsed steadily, its light bathing the room in a soft, otherworldly glow. Ethan leaned against the console, a tired but triumphant grin on his face. I can't believe we pulled it off. The ship's fixed, we're not dead, and I didn't accidentally implode the universe. I'd call that a win. Lyra chuckled, her expression uncharacteristically warm. You've come a long way, human. When we first met, I wasn't sure you'd survive a single day in my world. Ethan raised an eyebrow. And now? Now you're tolerable, she teased, though her tone carried a hint of affection. As they prepared for takeoff, Zix floated into the room, beeping happily. The drone projected a hologram of Axion, its cities twinkling like stars against the planet's surface. Zix says goodbye in its own way, Lyra explained. Ethan waved at the hologram. Goodbye, Axion. Thanks for the chaos and the weird musical duel. I'll never look at karaoke the same way again. Lyra shook her head, smirking. I'll miss your commentary, human. Miss it? Ethan asked, feigning surprise. Are you admitting you enjoy my company? Lyra rolled her eyes. Don't push your luck. The ship ascended, leaving Axion behind. The stars stretched out before them, infinite and inviting. Ethan watched the planet shrink into the distance, a strange mix of emotions swirling in his chest. So what now? He asked, breaking the silence. Lyra tapped a few buttons on the console, her gaze fixed on the star map. There's a lot of galaxy left to explore. And now that the ship's stable, I have no reason to hide. Ethan hesitated. Does that mean you'll be leaving? Lyra turned to him, her expression unreadable. That depends. Do you want me to stay? The question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken possibilities. Over the next few days, they settled into a rhythm. Lyra introduced Ethan to the ship's more advanced systems, while Ethan shared stories from Earth, his childhood, his favorite books, and the time he accidentally got stuck in a tree trying to impress a girl. Lyra laughed more than Ethan expected, and he found himself drawn to her sharp wit and quiet resilience. You're not what I expected, he admitted one evening as they sat in the observation deck, the stars glittering like diamonds outside. Lyra raised an eyebrow. What did you expect? I don't know, Ethan said, smiling. Something more alien. But you're just as complicated and stubborn as any human I've ever met. High praise, Lyra said dryly, though her lips twitched in amusement. Their bond deepened as they faced new challenges together. A malfunctioning navigation system led them to a rogue asteroid field, where Ethan's quick thinking saved the ship. Lyra, in turn, used her engineering skills to outwit a group of scavengers who tried to board them. Through it all, they learned to trust each other, their differences becoming strengths rather than obstacles. One day, as they drifted near a nebula that shimmered with iridescent colors, Lyra handed Ethan a small device. What's this? He asked, examining the sleek palm-sized object. A locator, Lyra said. If we ever get separated, you can use it to find me. Ethan stared at her, surprised. You're serious? Lyra nodded. You've proven yourself, Ethan, and I've grown to like having you around. Ethan grinned. Wow, 2 compliments in one day. Are you feeling okay? Lyra rolled her eyes. Don't push it. As their journey continued, Ethan began to notice subtle changes in himself. He was more confident, more adaptable. The man who had once felt trapped in his own life was now navigating the stars, facing challenges he never could have imagined. One night, as they sat under the vast expanse of the cosmos, Ethan turned to Lyra. "Thank you," he said simply. Lyra tilted her head. "For what?" "For showing me that there's more to the universe, and to myself than I ever thought possible," Ethan said. Lyra's gaze softened. "You've shown me something too, human, that not all humans are as predictable as I thought." Ethan laughed. "High praise coming from you." Eventually, their path led them to a crossroads. Lyra had unfinished business in a distant star system, while Ethan felt a pull to return to Earth, to share what he had learned and experienced. Their farewell was bittersweet. "Take care of yourself, Ethan," Lyra said, her voice steady, but her eyes betraying a hint of sadness. "You too, Lyra," Ethan said, "and don't forget, you owe me a rematch in that musical duel." Lyra smirked. "I'll hold you to that." As Ethan's escape pod descended toward Earth, he looked out at the familiar blue-green planet. He felt a strange sense of peace, knowing that he had been part of something extraordinary. The words Lyra had spoken to him when they first met echoed in his mind. "You can't forget me now, human." She was right. Ethan smiled, his heart full of gratitude and wonder. The universe was vast and unpredictable, but it was also full of connection, growth, and infinite possibility. And he was ready to face it all,